For many years, when we daven Mincha Maariv together, we would always have some learning in between, such an opportune time we're all together. Then there was something called COVID-19 that struck the world, and they closed down the shuls. When shuls began once again, so there was this push that we should come and get out of there as soon as possible. Maybe the germs, maybe someone will become infected, maybe we'll get COVID, God forbid. So we started to do what's called back-to-back Mincha Maariv. Back-to-back means you daven Mincha, then you finish Mincha, and then right away you enter into the world of Maariv, even though the still light in the sky. According to halach, it's okay to do such a thing, especially if you're not going to daven later. And so we've been doing that for quite some time already. However, as we learned over the last week or so since the Petir of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, there's a tremendous void in the world right now of how much Torah once upon a time was learned and how much Torah is not being learned in the world right now. So what better time for us to restart learning between Mincha Maariv when it's just on the tail end, the Shiva is over already, and it'll be a schus for his neshama, it'll be a schus for Klal Yisrael, it'll be a schus for us as well that we learn, especially now we're going to learn from the Haggadah of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. We're going to learn, he has hanhagas, he has the way in which he behaves, so to speak, during the leading up to the Seder and the Seder itself. Halachas of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and his pshatim is insights into the Haggadah itself. So really the main focus of what we're going to learn the next few weeks before Pesach is really Rav Chaim on the Haggadah, but just a little introduction that he brings over here in here. And he says like this, everybody has different ways in which they run the Seder, the night of the Seder. Some people like to go on and on and on into the wee hours of the night. They like to sing every single song. They like to stand up and act out the scenes and the events which took place. Some people like to get everybody involved in discussions. They ask a question, everybody responds, it goes around the table, people are into it. Some people like to go around the table, everybody reads a different part of the Haggadah, whether it's in Hebrew, it's in English, whichever language they choose. Everybody has different ways in which they go through the Seder night. Some people like the way that the leader of the Seder does it, and some people wish that they would have gone someplace else that night for the Seder. So Reb Chaim had a very beautiful and simple minhag, just like he was, beautiful and simple, according to halacha, according to the way that he understood Chazal. And he writes like this, that during the Maggid, which is the telling over of the Haggadah itself, the main body of the Haggadah, Rav Chaim only interrupts in a few places to add a few short explanations and interpretations of what he would like the listeners that are at the Seder to understand. And he doesn't allow anyone to interrupt him the entire night that he's telling over the Seder, the Haggadah. Why? Because he says over the following. And he says that the author of the Haggadah established the length of the Haggadah. And we don't have to add on to it. Everything is written there. If you're learning a Gemara, so you're not going to start adding in words that aren't there. Everything is there. You're learning Nach, you're learning Tanakh, you're learning the Chumash. You don't say the pasuk and start adding in psukim that don't exist. It's all there. So Chaim said the Haggadah was written in a very clear text, and the authors of the Haggadah, the author knew exactly what he was writing, and therefore he says there's no reason to add on to it. So he says there's plenty of time after the Haggadah is over, after the Suda is over. There's plenty of time, he says, for explanations, for insights, for Divrei Torah. And he says we can discuss the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Geula, the redemption. As it says, Kol Amar Be'harizeh Meshubach, the more that one increases, telling over the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, Harizeh Meshubach, you are praiseworthy. But it doesn't mean during the Seder, says Reb Chaim. The Seder is for the words that are in the Haggadah. From start to, I see my son is getting so excited that I'm saying this Reb Chaim over here. Don't tell mommy, please. Not any yourself. Not. So he says this, and here's the halacha l'maisa of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. The Maggid telling over the Haggadah, the story of the Seder, at night, takes no longer than a half an hour in his house. Well, look at all the smiles on everybody's face right now. Because he said that's what the Haggadah is. The Haggadah is the story. You read the words. They gave us the words. They picked every single word with the Ruach HaKodesh exactly the way it's supposed to be. What do you have to add on to them? Afterwards, by the Suda, by the meal, you'll have time to speak. When the meal is over, you'll have time to speak. You'll have time to go on ad chatzos or ad alois hashachar till the sun is coming up. But by the Suda, by the Haggadah itself, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, read the words, go straight through, get to the end half an hour later. You'll enjoy your wife's good cooking. Like many of us don't get to enjoy the good cooking of our wives who slaved away, koshering and cooking and everything because we're so busy with the Haggadah. And then afterwards you'll have plenty of time to speak. So he adds also over here that the Shulchan Aruch says that after the Seder is over, a person should occupy himself with the study of Yetzias Mitzrayim until sleep overcomes him. Till he falls asleep. He just can't go on any longer. That's really the way that a person should leave the Seder table. He should maybe not even leave the Seder table, just fall asleep by the table till the morning. But he writes that if a person is exhausted after finishing the Seder, as most of us usually are, if you're still awake by the end of the Seder, but assuming that you're still awake and you're exhausted, so he said, already you fulfilled the dictum, you fulfilled the concept that the sages are speaking about over here, of speaking about Yetzias Mitzrayim until sleep overcomes your eyes. Because the Seder is finished, you are exhausted, you want to go to sleep, you said everything you had to say, go to sleep, he says. You still fulfill the words of the Shulchan Aruch in that way. So again, you see, you don't have to stay up until 6 o'clock in the morning, telling it over. If you're exhausted, again, which many people, especially the first night, many people are literally exhausted from the week, the cleaning, the preparation, the shopping, the back and forth, the getting ready for the Seder and staying up late. So then if you're exhausted, go to sleep and you fulfilled what it says here in the Shulchan Aruch. And we'll leave off with one halacha that he says like this. There's daled kaises, there's 4 cups of wine we know that we have to drink. And the halach is that you don't have to drink every last drop that's in the cup. Rather, you have to drink most of the cup that is there. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky, however, is very careful. He was careful to make sure that by the first cup, by Kiddush, he made sure to drink the entirety of the kais of the cup. And he didn't drink only the majority, he drank the entire thing. Why? He says this was the custom of the Chazon Ish, and for a very simple halachic reason. We know that when a person makes Kiddush, so it has to be Kiddush b'makom Suda, which means when you make Kiddush, you're making Kiddush in the place where you're going to have the Suda, where you're going to have the meal. Now everybody knows that on the night of the Seder, you make Kiddush, and then you don't have the meal. There's a very long Haggadah, or a short Haggadah maybe this year, between the time that you make Kiddush until the time that you're finally going to wash your hands and eat the matzah and eat the rest of the meal. So one way that if a person is not going to eat a seudah of bread, let's say the person can't eat bread. A person has celiac and they can't eat bread. So how do they fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush b'makom Suda? So if you drink a revius, I think that it says over there in the Sharat Sion in the Mishnah Berurah that even if you do drink 2 revisim, but if you drink a revius of wine, which is the full shear, the full amount of the wine, so then that itself counts as b'makom Suda, that could take the place of the bread if you don't have the bread. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky says b'shem the Chazon Ish that since that from the time that you're going to make Kiddush until the time that you're going to start eating the meal, there's quite a hefsek, there's quite a break in between. Therefore, it behooves a person, it's much better lahalacha, that even if you don't drink all of the daled kais, all 4 cups, every last drop, at least by the first cup you should drink the entirety of the kais. Now he says that in reality, the Haggadah itself is not considered a hefsek, it's not considered to be a break between the Kiddush and the Seudah. Normally you have to make Kiddush and you have to wash right away and go into the Suda. You don't want to make any hefsekim, you don't want to make a break. But the Haggadah itself is part of the Maisa mitzvah, the whole mitzvah itself. So you go from Kiddush into the Haggadah, into the eating. It's all like one long mitzvah. And he says, in reality, it's not a hefsek, it's not a break. And therefore, it could be the halacha, you don't have to drink the entire first cup. However, since that we know the way that it works out of the Seder, sometimes you get up, you walk into the kitchen, you start schmoozing a little bit. Sometimes the conversation by the Seder table, I'm sure nobody's Seder table here, but sometimes it could drift into other things. Ukraine is on people's minds, sports is on people's minds, whatever's going on in the world is on people's minds, and somehow the conversation drifts into other things. So if your conversation by the Seder table ends up drifting into other topics besides what it says inside the Haggadah, so that already then is a hefsek, that's already a break between the Kiddush and the meal you're going to eat later on. And therefore he says, just to cover all of your bases, a person should be careful by the first cup. Even if by the other three you don't drink all of it, you just drink most of the cup that is there. By the first cup, drink it all. Then you fulfill, according to the Chazon Ish, you'll fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush b'makam Seudah, and then you can go as long, as short as you would like in the Haggadah. And even if you have a conversation that's extraneous before you get to the matzah, so you still covered your bases and you had a Kiddush b'makam Seudah and you have nothing to worry about. Okay, this is the beginning that we have in the Haggadah of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and Be'ez Hashem, we will continue tomorrow.